What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Striking Gold, your 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Network. My name is Rob Lowder. That is Kyle Posey. He covers the 49ers for NinersNation.com. And together, we cover the 49ers for all of you guys on the other side of the speaker, on the other side of the screen, all that great stuff. Coming off the weekend, I hope everybody had an excellent one. I had an excellent weekend. I went to Pismo Beach, which is one of the more popular beaches along the California coast. And if you've been there, you probably know about Splash Cafe, which we had twice. It was that good. Something about, clam chowder's obviously good, but that's just one of those things I reserve for being along the coast. I'm not going to order fish in Central California, so I prefer to get my my seafood when I'm at the sea. And man, it was so freaking good, so good. KP, what about you, man? How was your weekend?
It was good. I did a whole bunch of nothing, but I feel you there.
Weekends,
yeah. Honestly, I enjoyed it quite a bit. But to your point, so I live in Arizona. I'm going to eat Mexican food when I'm in Arizona. I am not going to eat barbecue when I'm in Arizona. So I hear you there. Please, people, know your locations, know your regions, and don't try new things when you don't have to.
You know, on that note, I'm sure I've mentioned it on here before, but I was stationed when I was in the Army in El Paso, Texas. You can guess as to what kind of food I ate the most often. That was some of the best Mexican food I have ever had, man. You could see the border from the base. So, you knew it was going to be rocking and rolling. And, man, it was good, dude. I remember they stick in my brain, and I've never had anything like them before. These enchiladas that had, this sour cream type of sauce poured over them. And I've never had enchiladas like that since. And it was just magical. It was magical. It was El Paso coming through on the Mexican food. Asada tacos, of course, just limitless. But anyways, this is not a food podcast. Although it could be. Maybe on another. Maybe we got to start jotting down some plans here. Maybe we can come up with a little side podcast. Start throwing in a little segment. We should start reviewing 49ers food. There was a time, blending this into 49ers talk, and we've mentioned this before too. There was a time when we could give you a food review on what we would have at 49ers training camp, because you've heard me tell you guys this before. After practice, you'd go into the media room, and how I'd always do it is I'd write one article before they came and got us and one article after. But after a while, they'd come to get us, and all of the media members would get taken to the 49ers cafeteria to eat lunch there. And it was, it's the same food they're feeding the players. And
you're eating phenomenal. With the players too.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. They would basically just give you this big to-go box, and you'd be like, here, man, whatever you want to put in it.
Yep. Do as you please.
Now they give you a refrigerator with some PB&Js and maybe something with a lunch meat in it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably get some ham and turkey. When I was there for OTAs, we got some pizza.
Every now and then something special shows up, like that Italian deli that I cannot remember the name of. That was just absolutely phenomenal. But I can't remember the name of it. All right. So again, blending it into 49ers things. That's what we got to talk about. Again, not a food podcast, but we're off to a good start. As I was on my way home from Pismo, I got a text from my co-host KB at _KB show, Kyle Posey, who came up with the idea to talk possible roster cuts, possible roster surprises. There isn't a training camp and a roster cut down that comes by that doesn't offer us some sort of a surprise. It happens every single time. What was the quarterback that was ahead of Brock Purdy the year they kept him, his rookie year, that they guaranteed a decent amount of money to, and they cut him anyways? Was
that the coach's kid? Was that Carter Bradley?
No. This was 2 years before that. I'm not going to be able to come up with his name. It's going to drive me insane. Somebody in the comments come through.
His rookie year?
It was Brock Purdy's rookie year. Carter Bradley was like last year. And what was Brock Purdy's rookie year? 2023?
22.
No, 2023 was his first full season. 2022 was his rookie year.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough because he didn't make final cut-downs, but he was on the roster the year before that.
I'm gonna get this.
Yeah, we're doing this right now. But anyways,
Sudfeld.
There you go, Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah.
He was on the team. He was on the team the year before, and then they guaranteed him a decent amount of money, I believe, to stay one more year, to stay on the next year, and that's when they cut him at roster cut downs in favor of keeping Brock Purdy, which, hindsight being 2020, pretty good move. That was a really long, drawn out, uneducated, unprepared way of saying there are always surprises. And no matter how great of a grasp you feel like you have on the roster, something always comes around. So KP and I came up with KP came up with three, we're going to name three players each, but there's kind of three categories: the surprise cut, and then the player that falls victim to kind of like the numbers game, and then the surprise make, the player to make the roster that would be surprised. Pop said Brandon Allen, no, but that's close. Brandon Allen actually had a decent amount of playing time. It was a good guess. All right, KP. So again, it's surprise cut, and then somebody that falls victim to kind of the numbers game. It may be a crowded position, and then somebody that was surprisingly made the roster, not a cut. Somebody that made the roster. So KP, why don't you lead us off, man?
I'm looking at the roster from 2022, and like running back is a great example. So you have JaMychal Hasty, the fan favorite JaMychal Hasty. You mean before that, right? Who was Raheem Mostert, a phenomenal example. So again, like there are always examples, especially with this team, just because the positions, you never know. I'm going to start with the surprise make, just because I think it's fun to talk about, to kind of project it, and that'll lead into I'll pivot to my surprise cut. So my surprise make is going to be Larry Worth. He is listed as a linebacker. I don't care.
Larry Worth the third, KP. We can't be limited off those numerals. We're a big numeral household here.
I forgot who I'm talking to.
Robert N. Lowder the fourth is in the chat.
That is so disrespectful, considering my co-host and his lineage. Okay, Larry Worth.
Good luck with your train of thought now, punk.
Larry Worth the third from Arkansas. Again, he's listed, I believe he's listed as a linebacker. He's wearing 40s, so DBs should not wear 40s ever. Sorry, Emmanuel Mosley. But I think Larry Worth has a good shot based on his body type, based on his projection, based on his athleticism, based on what the 49ers do not have. So I was watching Larry Worth against Notre Dame, and as you know, Jeremiah Love, Jordan Price, they have like a somewhat wide open offense, more so than what the Fighting Irish have had the past couple seasons. So you got to see what Arkansas was asking Worth to do. And he was doing a bunch of different things. He lined up at free safety in this game. He lined up in the box at linebacker. He lined up on the line of scrimmage, head up on a tight end. He was taking on blocks from offensive linemen in the run game down in the box. Sometimes he would be lined up over the number 2 wide receiver in the slot. So he was doing just about everything you can ask. That kind of versatility, in my mind, will give you a longer leash, right? The more you can do, the more flexibility you have, the more that coaches are going to give you a chance to do different things. So athleticism wise, he is elite. He is superb. His vertical jump was 37.5 inches, which is very good. That's above average. However, his broad jump was as good as it gets. Sonny Styles good. Sonny Styles was actually the only person. He actually tied with Sonny Styles for his broad jump, which is 11 foot 2 inches, 99th percentile. Good luck topping that. So he's 226 pounds. He ran a 4.66. Again, like that is the kind of athlete the 49ers haven't had, the kind of athlete the 49ers need. And I'm not saying he's going to play free safety, but he can. The fact that you saw Arkansas ask him to do that is a very good sign. So again, the athleticism, the versatility, like the length, the size of this guy, the ability that he's willing to take on offensive linemen. I'm not going to say like, hey, you're going to put him as an edge rusher and ask him to take on 300-pounders every down. But the fact that he did it in college is a good sign. And obviously, like with that kind of athleticism, he can run and cover tight ends. I saw him run with Price and Love down the sideline, so that's always nice. Just gives me a feel that this player can do some things that the 49ers, that Raheem Morris wouldn't be able to do with some other players who are on the roster, or other players who played last year at the same safety and linebacker spot. So I think Worth has a chance. Maybe he's a practice squad guy early on, and then eventually he's on the roster at some point this year, some point next year. He's on a 3-year deal, which is another reason why it's worth pointing out. So I like roster. I like roster, I like Worth to make the roster at some point. I think he can be a sneaky good ad, and potentially make an impact to some degree, even if it's covering kicks as a special teamer. Maybe that's where we see Worth. It should be noted he played for Arkansas, which is almost objectively the worst defense in college football last season. So he's not going to be on many teams' radar. It doesn't take much. You don't have to watch Arkansas football long to realize this is a team that's going to give up probably 40 points a game and just be a sieve defensively. So that's probably a ding for him. But if you have to watch the player, you have to watch what he's being asked to do, his tasks, and how he's effective. You know, if he has the aggression, if he's doing that effectively, if he's flying around, like all the different things. I think he does do that. I think he can bring just a level of athleticism and dynamic that the 49ers don't have. So Larry Worth, surprise make a month and a half from now.
Well, and what I like about that choice is obviously the 49ers saw something in him, because he went to their rookie tryout and the 49ers signed him off of that rookie tryout. So they watched him practice football, and then they're like, yep, we need that guy on our 90-man roster,
Yeah.
which again, it doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't mean you're making the 53, but it means that he impressed somebody, and that somebody, whoever that was able to vouch for him to make the roster, is going to continue to watch him and figure out what he wants to do to try and make this team. I mean, how many humans are walking around on the planet that are 6'4", 220 pounds that could still run a 4.62 and that have an 11.2 broad jump? Like, that's just not a very common human being. For a guy his size, a 1.57 10-yard split too is pretty respectable. It'll be interesting to see what he can do. And it's not like the 49ers are just absolutely stacked at safety. There's a perfect chance for somebody to surprise there. They're really, outside of maybe Malik Mustafa, is not anybody. There's nobody in that safety room that says, nope, this guy has to make the roster. I mean, as much as I want to see them give somebody like Marquise Siegel more run, he's still not somebody that I would just be blown away if like he somehow didn't make it, or somebody made it over him or jumped him for a spot on the depth chart type of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. I looked him up on Dane Brugler's The Beast. He says Worth is a former walk-on and hasn't lost that mentality, with the straight line explosion to fly down the field, which shows on defense, but even more so on special teams. And like that should, and there's a weird dynamic in the 49ers fan world where I feel like special teams is almost like almost looked down on, or like a throwaway. Like,
that's his best bet to make the roster, is like just show that kind of athleticism. Hey, We need him to go cover kicks.
Which is exactly what I was going to say. Anytime somebody makes a little, like, especially somebody like Dane Brugler, who's very well respected in the NFL world, anytime they make a specific mention of a player's strength being on special teams, that's how on the bubble guys make the roster. Is they're like, we can use that guy as a gunner. That's how these guys that are working on those rosters, that's how the GMs of the world and the high level coaches determine if a guy's going to make it over somebody else. Like, okay, well, this guy, we maybe like his skill set a little bit better. We maybe value what he does on the field a little bit better, but he's not going to play special teams for us. So we just can't afford to keep him right now, and that's how somebody like Larry Worth squeaks on. And then Dane also said after arriving in the SEC, Worth was one of the most consistent tacklers in college football. He's a tall, long athlete with some tightness, but he has decent speed once he strides out and gets going. His short area burst and redirect skills are mediocre, which limit his ability to make plays on the football and coverage, but he sees the field well to anticipate and consistently be in the neighborhood. So you're talking about a guy that was picked up in a tryout, and there's little sprinkles of like, okay, he can do this and this. There's a chance. There's a chance. And again, like Brugler said, he's like anybody with a walk-on type of mentality. Well, he just walked onto the 49ers roster, and
right.
Let's see where he goes from there.
All it takes is, like, you don't want to wish this on anybody, but all it takes is one injury, and now he moves up the depth chart. And now maybe he goes from special teamer to having to play maybe 10, 20, 15 snaps. So you just slowly but surely work your way up. You get noticed by doing the little things like hustling, flying around. And I think that matters. Like I'm glad you mentioned the tackling thing because he was consistent. I will point out he had a one-on-one in the goal line situation with Jeremiah Love, and Love did some video game juke that was nasty that anybody would have fell for. And it's a highlight for Love, low light for Worth, but still, I do think the consistency for non-top 3 players when he's tackling them is going to go a long way. Where are you going next?
Okay, so we're starting with surprise make. I am going with the other. Same. Keeping it on the defensive side of the football. I'm going with defensive end, Nebraska defensive end. Excuse me, Indiana, not Nebraska. Indiana defensive end, Mikhail Kamara, national champion. Obviously, he in terms of where the college experience he's leaving, he was at the very top. They won the national championship, but in terms of his prospects and his likelihood of making an NFL roster, he's still very much a long shot, especially on a 49ers defensive front that is kind of chocked full with talent right now. Again, you got working your way down the defensive front. You got Nick Bosa, Oso Odigizua, Alfred Collins, Mykel Williams, CJ West, Grayson Halton, who they just drafted, Sam Okuwanu, who they just re-signed. Then you got Romello Height, who they just drafted in the 3rd round. And then there's a bevy of guys in front of him that, for the most part, Keon White, who's recovering from a gunshot to the ankle. But for the most part, Mikhail Kamara has the odds of him making the roster are very, very, very low. But I started to read through his scouting reports, and I was like, this sounds like a guy who takes it personally and could surprise some folks. Like, here's what Dane Brugler said. Kamara doesn't have the size or athletic profile most teams desire, but you feel his impact during games. It won't be surprising if that carries over to his professional career. Mikhail Kamara he's not even 6'1", and he's 250 pounds. 9 and 5 inch hands, that's fine. 31 and 3/8 arms is on the shorter side, but they kind of match up for a guy that's not even 6'1". But at the same time, in terms of the measurables, that he's going to be going up against guys that have 33 plus inch arms. So he's going to be consistently overmatched. So you look at what Dane Brugler says, then you jump over to NFL.com, and this is what Lance Zierlein's overview said. From a trait standpoint, Kamara might not be as exciting as other late round hopefuls, but his tape is likely more physical and more consistent. He's very rugged and gets right to his action on each snap. He's not sudden, but consistently works around blockers using harmonious hands and feet. He lacks length and is below average taking on blocks at the point. He has some closing burst in his rush, but his get off and counter work is average. Kamara has physical limitations, but he knows how to play ball and has toughness that will appeal to NFL teams. So it's like, if you compare Lance Zierlein's words with Dane Brugler's words, you're like, okay, this is a guy that, despite his lack of measurables and despite what size he is, has just made a habit of succeeding anyways. Now this last year wasn't very impressive. His last year wasn't impressing. I mean, he did make they did win the national championship. You did hear how, his impact can still be felt. But the year before that, he had 10 sacks. The year before that, he had 7.5 sacks with James Madison. He had, between those two, 33.5 tackles for loss. And there was somebody in there that mentioned, I think I clicked out of him like an idiot, that mentioned his pressures over that time. And it was like through the roof. So, and what's interesting is, let me see where he's at. What are Sam Okuanu's measurables? Sam O is 6'1", 269. So Michael Kamara is almost the same size as Sam O, just weighs a little bit less. And so they've already got in a way, they've already got a Michael Kamara on the roster. And it wouldn't surprise me if, in Samo, and it wouldn't surprise me if Kamara was able to claw his way up there. And especially right now, when you're looking at somebody like Michael Williams is probably going to start the year on the PUP list, which opens up the door for an undrafted free agent to make the roster if they wanted to, if they were able to have the training camp they need to have. He's also competed with other pretty respectable undrafted free agents in like Bryson Eason and James Thompson. There's guys like Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valdez that kind of have a right to a roster spot before he does. He's going to have to beat them out. So that is my surprise make from all the way down. If you're looking at our lads 49ers depth chart, there's about 12 guys here before you get to Michael Kamara's name. So I'm going to pick him as my surprise make at a position where the 49ers could use a little bit of help.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's a pass rusher, so he already has a leg up, I feel like. Okay, 6-year senior, check. They love these guys with experience, national champion, so the pedigree. And then he has production. So he's coming in with 3 things that you love. He has motor, like he has a hustle. He's going to play balls to the wall. You want that too. Doesn't have like a great first step, but you could tell he just has a knack for getting after the quarterback. I don't want to say he has like a great bag when it comes to rushing the passer and beating offensive tackles, but he has the kind of FBI that you like. Didn't have like great numbers in college as far as, tackles for loss, pressure rate goes, but they were respectable. And I think whenever you can find somebody as productive as he was, whenever you can look at, again, like somebody.
Oh, we lost KP. How could this have happened? Hey, well, KP's inevitably going to come back. He's got to figure himself out. Hopefully he didn't lose his internet connection, but he was in the middle of backing up my pick, man. That's unfortunate. Rhode Island Niner in the chat said, "What's up, Rob and Kyle? I think they need a vet pass rusher." I would agree with that. I mean, it's not really... Obviously, that's not the podcast that we're talking right now, but I've been on the keep adding to the vet pass rush thing for a while now. He also said the Niners need to side Clowney. Yeah, I would. That's probably my 1A of players that they need to sign is Jadeveon Clowney, because again, I've said he can kind of slide back and forth in the same way Michael Williams can. But it looks like we've got KP back. He's here. Let's add him to the stage. Are you okay?
I was talking for 2 minutes straight. I was on a nice little roll, and then I looked up and I realized I was not connected. So that was fun.
And it wasn't even like you froze and like things got weird. It was just like bam, like you were out, like you were done podcasting for today. You said what you needed to say, and you were out of here, man.
I'll catch y'all later. Okay. Where did you last hear?
The last thing I heard from you is you were talking about Michael Kamara and how his numbers were just decent, but they were good enough, and add the production to.
I think a bigger reason why he didn't get drafted, aside from like his length, is just the injury history. If you go back, like he has multiple season-ending injuries, and yes, he's a few years removed from that, but you can't ignore that. So when you don't have overwhelmingly athletic traits and you have the injury history, there's always some doubt. So he has that as a disadvantage. But again, like he has the pedigree, and he's going to get plenty of opportunities in the preseason to beat up on some pretty bad players, some third stringers who probably aren't going to make NFL rosters, who's only going to make him look better. So I definitely thought about Kamara. I would not be surprised, even if like he doesn't stick, if he ends up being like a practice squad guy, and eventually maybe he doesn't sign right away, but they end up bringing him back.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, you're up, man. Keep it rolling. Do you want to? You can go with the surprise cut, or you can go with the kind of the numbers game. You take it wherever you want to take it.
I'm going to go surprise cut because I think that's a good segue from what I was just talking about. So, okay, I think Larry Worth has a chance because long, athlete, versatile, and just can do a lot of things that the 49ers safeties could not do last year. That means a surprise cut is going to be Jair Brown, which I would imagine would make a lot of fans happy. I think Jair Brown is a serviceable player. I do not want to paint a picture like I think he's a bad player because I don't think he's a bad player. I do feel like whatever he showed in college is not what he's able to do as a pro. In college, he was a free safety, center field, jumping on passes, getting in throwing lanes, like coming up with interceptions. Way back when, as a junior at Penn State, he led the nation in interceptions. But that was a long time ago. For whatever reason, he's not nearly as confident. Maybe it's just the lack of athleticism. He doesn't trust what he sees, and he's a little more hesitant. But last year, like you saw some things, and I mentioned, like, okay, when he's close to the line of scrimmage, I do feel like he's a good run defender. I will give him credit for that. But the further away you get from the line of scrimmage, like the less valuable you are. And in this case, like he's more suspect. He's more of a liability. If you just look at some of his coverage numbers from last year, like they are rough. So in coverage, Brown forced a tight window throw, according to Next Gen Stats, only 8.8% of the time. That is bad. On 34 targets, he allowed an average separation of 4.3 yards. So on those targets, on average, he was 4 yards away from the player that he was intended to be covering.
You could have like three more Jairs in between him and the guy catching the ball.
You could have like two of him horizontally, and he still wouldn't be there. You cannot have that as a safety. As your last line of defense, we just talked about Worth being a consistent tackler. Well, Jair Brown, he had a broken tackle missed rate in the 22% range last year. Like, that can't happen, man. At one every 4 times almost, you're missing a tackle. That's bad, man. And his advanced stat numbers are worse. Minus 8.7 EPA, minus 11.1 catch rate over expectation. He allowed 4 touchdowns on those 34 targets. Like, I think people forget. Well, people don't forget. I'm not going to say that. He didn't start the season. Like, a rookie beat him out in training camp. So who's to say that Siegel won't do that again this year? Who's to say Worth or somebody else that we're not mentioning, maybe an Ashton Davis, doesn't jump him, maybe not in practice early on, but what about once we get to joint practices against the Titans and the Chargers or preseason where, okay, Jair, man, we're waiting for you to do something different. We're waiting for you to revert to what we saw as a rookie, and still nothing. Like, it's not there. So I think him being in the last year of his rookie deal will make this easier. And also the money issue is a big reason why I have him here. So the 49ers could save $3.67 million in cap space, and you can turn that into maybe a Jesse Bates, maybe a pass rusher, maybe somebody else that, is on your radar. So that's where I think you know who he is at this point, right? If you're banking on your defensive line to protect a player, which they are, like, in fairness for probably all of their secondary players, I feel like you don't have to go down swinging with a player who's proven that he can't run. Like, you need to be able to run as a safety. You need, when you can't cover tight ends, you can't do like the bare minimum things in coverage. And to make up for that, when I saw that he had 2 interceptions, I do not remember him having 2 interceptions last year. But when just looking at some of his
coverage, I remember the one at the back of the end zone. That's the only one I remember.
I would imagine they were more meaning, like none of them had like held any weight. I imagine like none of them were any game-changing plays, which is another reason why I feel like it'd be easy to just turn the page for him because as much as I have stuck up for him in the past, it's hard to imagine anything new happening with Jair Brown because your improved defensive line. I would rather allow somebody else to fail in that position because he already has.
Rhode Island 49ers said the Niners should trade Jair. Do you think another team would be willing to give up like a late rounder for him? Like a 5th or a 6th?
It'd probably be a conditional. So he is in the last year of his rookie deal, so he's cheap. And when that is the case, is when you usually do see these kind of deals happen. So I don't think it's a stress to imagine him getting traded. They would probably hold on to him, toward August or toward the end of August. and maybe they see some names out there, and other teams are giving, they're calling the 49ers front office and, hey, are you guys really going to move off of Jair Brown? We'll give you a 6th round pick. We'll give you a day 3, a 7th, or anything. And knowing that he's probably not in their future plans, it would be a lot easier to do so. This is also contingent on, Marcus Siegel taking that next step, maybe just being the speed that they need. That's another reason why I think all the 49ers offseason moves are a direct reflection of what they didn't have last year. It's really confusing that they didn't add a safety based on everything last year. So to go in this season and expect just Jair Brown to be a different player, that's just not how the NFL works. It's not how anything in life works. So I just can't imagine them just kind of gifting him a spot and hoping things are different. So that's why I picked Jair Brown. A long-winded answer to say things are probably not going to be different.
No, and I do feel like that's where we're at with Jair Brown. I feel like we've seen it. He's gotten ample opportunity. Like, I don't think that necessarily, what's the best way to say this? I guess that is the best way to say it. They've given him plenty of opportunity to improve, to show that he is a different player, show that he's capable of doing something more. And he did have his momentary little flashes in the pan, but for the most part, I feel like the one thing I remember most of Jair Brown is just flying up to the guy with the ball as fast as you can and then flying right by him,
Right. And like looking over his shoulder, like, whoa, where'd it go?
Yeah. So it's, and again, that's not all he did. But it just feels like that's the most prevalent and repetitive thing I saw from him, the most predictable thing I saw from him. So it just feels like it might be about that time. And maybe another team's willing to offer you a late rounder for him. And I would take that, especially if you've got younger guys, maybe somebody with a more diverse skill set that you think can benefit. I'm not exactly sure who that is. Again, it's going to be a competition, man. The safety spot is up for grabs. You've got Jair Brown, who is in no way guaranteed anything. Like, that's why we're talking about him. You got Malik Mustafa, who seems like the most solidified person in that group, especially coming off of like another year removed from his injury. Ashton Davis has starting experience. We'll see if he can work his way into a spot. Marquise Siegel. What's weird is if you look at it, whether it's Marquise Siegel or Ashton Davis coupled with Malik Mustafa, at least you're getting more speed out there. At least you're adding something to the mix. And that was never Jair Brown's, going all the way back to when he was drafted. He was never a speed guy. I think he ran like a 4.7 40 coming at before the draft, something along those lines.
4.6, but I know it was like subpar.
Yeah, it was
4.65.
Okay. So there's room there, man. And depending on what Raheem Morris wants, he could value somebody else's skill set a lot more. And he might want a more complementary setup with Malik Mustafa and then somebody who offers some speed. So, and again, like somebody like Larry Worth coming all the way up to the front. Jalen Stroman, another undrafted free agent that I've heard a lot of people talk about. Darren Canteen, they like him. Not sure if they like him enough to give him a shot at a roster spot. Well, we'll see, man. That's up to them.
So Rhode Island Niner says Jair Brown is one of the comments. Rhode Island Niner says Jair is a 3rd round pick. The Niners shouldn't get rid of him for nothing. The core is aging. We need all the draft capital to replace his core. You don't view players as picks 3 years into their deal, right? Like, he's no longer a 3rd rounder in their eyes. If he were, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The fact that he's performed the way he has, like, that's how you view him. Like, they're not looking at it, even some other draft picks, right? You can go down the list. You can't hold that over their head, whether it's good or bad. And now he's just a player on the roster, and you have to move on. Maybe you have to give him another chance, but even if they were to hold on to Jair, it wouldn't be because he's a 3rd rounder. It's because the lack of depth behind him. Maybe he's the best option. Maybe there are no other options, but it wouldn't be because of his draft status. You can't do business like that. It's not in the NFL.
49ers have a lot of 3rd rounders that are no longer on the roster that never commanded any sort of a draft pick. And I'm not punching down on Rhode Island Niner. I get what he's saying. You want to get some value from somebody like that, especially with somebody so much starting experience. But the 49ers have done some stuff with 3rd rounders that you just wouldn't even want to remember. Captain Niner said, Brown played best when he had a legit DB coach to coach him. Possible Gray can find that talent again, like Wilkes did. I think it's a reasonable point. Like the entire secondary's coaching staff has been rehauled. You got Gray, you've got Raheem Morris, who is a secondary guy, and then I forgot the name of the actual DB coach now. I had it pulled up here, Ray Brown. So you're adding Ray Brown, you're adding Jerry Gray, and then you're adding Raheem Morris. So again, there's just because Jair Brown has looked rough up until this point does not mean there couldn't be any sort of a resurgence from him. I think that's a good point, though.
Can we talk about that real quick?
You can. This is one half of your podcast, man.
In my mind, when he was at his best, Jair Brown, like his rookie year, right? He was playing next to a veteran, Tayshaun Gibson. So he came in for Talanoa Funga, which doesn't hurt to help have that kind of mind on the sideline, right? When you're coming off the field, because he sees the game like a quarterback. He was legit an all-pro. So you have Talanoa Funga to lean on, and you have Tayshaun Gibson, the veteran, who feels like the last safety they had, who could generate turnovers. So you have those two to lean on. You could have Jair in a very, very specific role. That helps a ton. So you don't have to ask Jair Brown to do all these different things. You can leave him in a very specific role to do very specific things he's good at. When that's not the case, this question, yes, exactly this comment. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you put a bunch of good players around him, he was fine. He was good, right? but in real life, that's just not how things work. So if the 49ers did have a veteran safety, I would feel much better about Jair Brown because I do think highly of Tayshaun Gibson, but that's just not the case, right? Malik Mustapha is still young. He's growing. He's on his rookie deal. I wish I had a different train of thought about Jair Brown, but he hasn't given me he hasn't given me a reason to.
Right. And he right now he is the veteran, and that's just he's the one making the decisions, that's
so dangerous.
Right, that's part of the problem. That's why he's struggling. All right, we'll move off the Jair Brown slander. We've beaten that guy to a pulp. You did the surprise cut, right? Surprise
cut. Where are you going next?
Going to the other side of the ball, and depending on where your mindset's at, this may not be all that surprising. There's a couple names I could have picked here. I'm going for my surprise cut. I'm going with wide receiver Christian Kirk. And again, like I said, depending on where your head's at, that may not be a surprise at all. But there's plenty of people out there that have assumed, and I've even had this conversation too. I'm totally down with it for the most part, that Christian Kirk is kind of like this pseudo, like maybe starts the season getting more snaps than somebody like Deshaun Stribling. And then they slowly kind of blend him into the offense and he picks up more. So Cal Chipto said Kirk over Robinson for a surprise cut. Yes. And the reason why I picked Kirk, again, the point was for it to be a surprise was one, Christian Kirk has not signed to enough money to warrant going back to my example from earlier in the podcast, Nate Sudfeld, when they cut him, they'd guaranteed him a decent amount of money too, because a quarterback that they wanted as the backup, and then Brock Purdy came in and gave him a reason to boot him out. Now there are several ways that could happen. The one thing with Demarcus Robinson is towards the end of the season last year, and obviously into the playoffs, he started to develop a decent rapport with Brock Purdy, and maybe that and I'll say this as well, going all the way back to the offseason. Robinson looked awesome during the offseason, during training camp before this season. Now, again, he had to start the season off with a suspension.
He was an all-pro if you didn't know any better.
Right. He looked great. And I was like, dang, man, this guy's going to be a great addition to the team. But then he had to start the year off suspended from that DUI thing in the offseason. And he started the year off suspended. And then it just kind of seemed like it took him forever to get him going. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know why that is. I don't know if there's personality stuff. Who knows what goes on a reason a guy doesn't crack the field, especially given how good he looked during training camp. But necessity met, whatever I'm trying to say there. There's a need, some type of phrase there with the word necessity and need or whatever. And he got onto the field late in the season, and him and Brock looked like they had a decent connection. He put up a big game in the playoffs. And so maybe there's a chance where if the 49ers have to choose between one or the other, because you got to understand the other pressure here that I haven't even talked about is Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins both have, I think it's both 3 years because I think Jacob Cowing's last year didn't count. 3 years of cost controlled rookie contracts.
Matters.
And it's, again, they're not really paying Christian Kirk enough money for cutting him to be that big of a deal. They wouldn't even be saving that much money by cutting him. It's almost negligible. But what they wouldn't be doing is letting one of those rookies get away from him. And I think there's a very good chance if Jordan Watkins or Jacob Cowing were cut, that they would be picked up by another team. You can't, who knows? There's been plenty of players that the 49ers have cut that haven't been picked up that we've been surprised by. But there is a part of me that thinks that the 49ers want to keep both Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing, and Demarcus Robinson and Christian Kirk are going to be battling it out for that fourth spot. I'm just assuming they keep 6. They could go even less than that, then this gets even scarier. So, again, I'm not acting like Christian Kirk was going to have some monumental role on the offense, and therefore cutting him is just creating some void. But at the same time, Demarcus Robinson has also spent a year on this team. He's due quite a bit more money. I should have looked at his contract here. He has a $2.7 million cap number. So that's not crazy. I'd have to look at how his contract structured to see if they would be willing to move off him. It wouldn't save them much money. They'd have a pretty big dead cap hit. I wondered if they have to post June 1 it. No. So if you're looking for more context, Demarcus Robinson, whether they did pre or post June 1, would still be costing them either 3.7 or 2.4 million. So there's a bit more incentive if it came down to having to cut one of those veteran guys for it to be Kirk over Robinson. And again, I had to pick somebody to make a surprise cut. There has to be some sort of surprise element to it. I'm in no way saying that Christian Kirk needs to be cut or should be cut, but it wouldn't necessarily shock me if they had to go that route in order to keep their younger guys.
These are the two that I debated on as well. So I went back and forth between Christian Kirk. I went back and forth between Demarcus Robinson. In my mind, you want to turn the page from what you had last year because your wide receivers outside of Ricky Pearsall were not good last year. You're not wrong about Purdy building a rapport with Demarcus Robinson. To me, that says more about the quarterback than it does Demarcus Robinson. So there's no new information that you need to know about Demarcus Robinson because he's been in the NFL for 10 years. Christian Kirk adds a level of speed that Demarcus Robinson does not have. It might be repetitive because of exactly what you said with Cowing and Watkins. So they're probably not going to move off the rookies, barring injury. So there's a little bit of repetitiveness there. But I feel like you could say the same thing with Mike Evans and DeJon Strickland. So you have those two big bodies who are fast and can win one-on-one. Whereas I thought Robinson, he had to be schemed open, quite a bit. Some of the plays against the Eagles, that was more of Kyle Shanahan than anything. That was Brock Purdy throwing him open. That was Purdy throwing it on time, and Robinson had to make a contest. So they're just going through his targets. You never feel next game, look out, here comes Demarcus Robinson. So that's where I went back and forth. So on my surprise cut, numbers game, I should say, I kept Kirk and I went with Robinson just for the speed factor, right? You didn't have speed last year. Why in the world would you keep the 10-year vet who, even if you're worried about, even if you want to bring him back, let him pass through waivers, cross your fingers, and if not, you have Kirk, right? So you mentioned the money issue. I think that's kind of, I don't know if it's a big deal for whether
it's not a
Kirk,
huge deal either way for either
Robinson.
player.
The 49ers would eat $2.43 million with a post June 1 cut. But the way Robinson's contract is structured, they'd be able to recoup $2.54 million next year, thanks to adding a bunch of void years like they do. So there's ways around this. I think just looking at it again, they both had big wild card games last year, but it felt like what Kirk did and what Kirk has done as a pro is more sustainable than what Demarcus Robinson is. And again, you have backups for both, right? Well, they're both backups in my mind. I wouldn't be surprised if both players were cut, honestly, but you didn't have Kirk on the roster last year. You want to see what he can do in your offense, whereas you just went through an entire season. And if you just go through Robinson's game logs, he was putting up donuts for most of the year. Like he was an afterthought pretty much until December. So it was really surprising, honestly. Though you brought up how he was viewed as in training camp. You'd have thought they replaced Brandon Ayuk in training camp with Demarcus Robinson was how people were talking about him, but we didn't see that. And I know the 3-game suspension was a thing, but even after that, like he still never found his footing. And even in the Ricky Pearsall, when he was hurt, Robinson never really stepped up. So I think all of that ties into why it would be easier to move on from him and then just give whatever those snaps you can do. Like the way he was being used in OTAs was basically just as a decoy. Or if Mike Evans was the decoy, like Demarcus Robinson was the beneficiary. So you can do that with anybody, right? Like if the defense is going to gravitate toward your wide receiver one, why not use more speed with Kirk? That's how I got it. But it's going to be a numbers game. There's no doubt. I think all in all, though, you have that body type in Mike Evans, in De'Zhaun Stribling. You don't really need to find out what you have in Demarcus Robinson because you already have, right? You just went through a year. So I think Robinson is going to be the odd man out. So you have Evans, Stribling, Cowing, Watkins, Kirk. Maybe there's room for both of them to stay, but in this exercise, I think Robinson gets caught up in the numbers game. Maybe he's added back, but I would have an easier time moving off of somebody who was on the roster when I could not throw the ball outside of the numbers against playoff caliber teams. And he was my wide receiver one. Maybe obviously he's not viewed as a wide receiver one, or else he'd have a much better contract. But there's nothing really that he does that stands out in my mind to make you be like, oh, that's the guy that we need on the roster. Whereas Kirk, like he has the speed. He's proven that he can run away from people. Like we have film of him torching the 49ers. And you can't really say that for Demarcus Robinson. So I went with Robinson over Kirk. But again, I think it's a coin flip, and there's a reason we're talking about both players here.
Yeah, it ended up the way you did it with the order of things. It ended up working out the way I talked about Christian Kirk, and the way you blended it into Demarcus Robinson. That's how we do it here, KP. That's how we do it around here. Now, my last one, and it's kind of my numbers game cut, but it could very well play into what you would deem surprising. My numbers cut / could be a little surprising is offensive lineman Robert Jones. And it just kind of comes down to looking at the position. I think there's also a little bit of assuming going on. This guy's coming off a season in which he did not play football because he had a severe neck injury and wasn't able to play a snap for the Dallas Cowboys. And we're kind of just assuming because of a good 2023 that he's just going to come in and be the best guy for the job. And that's just not the way things are set up. You know, they signed him to a
dangerous
one-year
assumption,
deal.
man.
Right. So, and if you look at the depth chart along the offensive line and everybody competing for that left guard spot, you got Connor Colby, you got Carver Willis. Carver Willis is a 4th-round pick, and I'm not saying in any way he's better than somebody like Robert Jones. I don't even know what to expect from Robert Jones because, again, coming off a major injury, the last time we saw him was 2024. Was it 2024?
Yeah, 24. Just basically
for the Dolphins. So there's just a lot to not know there. And again, there's quite a few people. We don't know. I'm assuming the 49ers view Brett Toth as a center backup, but at the same time, he played a little bit of left guard out of necessity and was not bad there. I don't know if he's going to be a part of that competition at left guard, although I sort of doubt it. Then you've got Carver Willis, then you've got Connor Colby, and then you've got Robert Jones. So conceivably, there's 4 guys there that could all sort of be in the mix at left guard. And then if you start going through the roster number part of things, and KP and I have done a 53 prediction, and we'll probably do another one towards the end of training camp after preseason type of thing. But you've got Trent. I'm just counting out, with my fingers right now. Trent Williams, let's say Connor Colby, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colton McKivitz. That's 5. Okay. I'm going to assume they're going to keep Carver Willis and Enrique Cruz, even though assuming they're going to keep a 5th rounder isn't necessarily always a strong bet, but we'll just assume right now. So now we're at 7. And then I think they're going to like Brett Toth a lot. So that's 8. That's behind Jake Brendel. And then you're looking at one more after that. You've got Vidarian Lowe, who they signed to a decent contract. He's going to be their swing tackle, both their right and left. I think they like him a lot just based on how quickly they got him and the money they gave him. I think he's a big peace of mind thing. If something were to happen to Trent Williams, I think they realize that Vidarian Lowe can be very serviceable. So what was that? Was I at 8 or 9? I can't even remember. whatever. I should have remembered. I think I was
I
at
think 8.
I think I was at after Vidarian Lowe. I think I was at 9. So,
Okay.
anyways, they could just keep those 9. I think in my 53-man roster prediction, I had them picking up 10, and not at no point there did I say Robert Jones. So now, again, maybe they don't keep Brett Toth. Maybe Robert Jones slides in there, but somebody. It's just kind of a wild spread between somebody who's kind of being assumed by a lot of people is going to win the job at starting left guard versus, yeah, and I think I had him there too. He could also
It's not smart.
not even make the roster. Like, he could be the starter. He could also not make the roster. So this, you could label this as a surprise cut. You could also label this as purely a numbers game where the 49ers chose to keep their 4th and 5th round rookie, and they chose to keep a couple other guys at different spots ahead of him, and bam, there goes Robert Jones.
There's nothing in his contract that suggests he's going to make the roster. They gave him $1.3 million. But,
which is probably what's the minimum for him, right? It might be 1.3 million. That might be the minimum.
Yeah, I don't know the vet minimum, but it's pretty close, I would imagine. So they would just have to eat that plus the signing bonus. So 1.64 is what the dead money would be. So again, 1-year contract, guy coming off a serious neck injury. A neck injury is nothing to mess with. Everybody knows that. So to expect him to hit the ground running is such a dangerous assumption with a year off of football. So he hasn't had any kind of contact. He is 27, so it's not like he's over the hill or old or anything.
No.
But even before that Dolphins season, so he played over 1,000 snaps, started all 17 games in 2024. But before that, 5 games, 7 games, 1 game. Like those were his starts. So he's basically 1 year since he's been in the NFL in 2021. And the most recent year, he didn't play because of the worst kind of injury you could have. So, yeah, there's no doubt. I wonder if this is more of, hey, we want to bring in some vets to obviously we want them to start, but to push our rookies to let them know, like, hey, we have to have some kind of competition in. I know Connor Colby's not a rookie, but he was a 7th rounder, didn't play much after the first 6-7 games or whatever it was. So they want to push Colby. They want to push some of these other young guys on the roster. And what better way to do that with an established veteran like Jones, who does have starting experience. But again, man, it's quite a leap of faith to assume that he's just going to pick up where he left off in 2024.
Right. Yeah, that was my that was kind of my reasoning behind it. And again, we're just picking surprises. Sure. We're not necessarily making any proclamations. There's
statements.
There's still a chance that Robert Jones might be the starter, but you can see just by breaking it down really quickly and really simply that there is a way in which he not only is not the starter, but doesn't even make the roster, just with a few quick choices from a roster construction standpoint. And, a couple strong training camps from a couple of players, and bam, they've got to go a different direction. It's kind of ruthless. There were some other offensive linemen I told with, Austin Pleasance, who's somebody that came in to this as a starter in replacement of Trent Williams late last year, and played decent for 1 game. Didn't play so decent the next game, but he's kind of been replaced by Vidarian Lowe, who they signed as, I could see him being I wouldn't call it a surprise. He would definitely fall into the numbers thing, but KP, man, I think we hit our points, dude. You got any last little thoughts before we roll on out of here?
No, fun little exercise, man. And yeah, I think we're good here.
Yep. We got another pod coming up on Wednesday. Everybody in here, if you haven't done it already and you wouldn't mind doing it, make sure you hit the like button to help our channel keep growing. If you don't subscribe, make sure you subscribe. That obviously would help the channel keep growing. That is growth. But I appreciate you guys being here, man. Appreciate you guys hanging out, being a part of the conversation, and just making things a little bit more interesting. If anybody that's in the YouTube channel and anybody that's listening online, drop by our podcast, whether it's on Apple or Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review if you wouldn't mind. We would greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I feel sometimes it just goes too smoothly. You feel like you're forgetting something. We didn't mention Brandon Ayuk, which was not a mistake. That's probably the best thing.
There it is.
I could have done. Now I have. I did it now. You ruined it, Rob. But that's about it, man. I appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate everybody being here in the YouTube channel. Y'all already know what it is. For another episode, I'm Rob. That's KP. This is Striking Gold, and we are signing out.